You're ready to go. Thank you.
Okay. Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Child Tax Rebate Program Informational Forum hosted by the Finance, Revenue, and Bonding Committee. I am Sean Scanlon, and for a few more days at least, I am the chairman, I'm the House chairman of the Finance, Revenue, and Bonding Committee, and joined here this morning by a number of speakers, as we'll get to in a second. And I have some introductory remarks, but just want to kick it over to my friend and co-chair, Senator Fonfara, to see if he has any remarks this morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Just looking forward to listening and learning. Thank you.
And Representative Cheeseman, anything you want to offer before we get going?
No, just looking forward, as Senator Fonfara said, to listening and learning, and hopefully going away with some useful information. Thank you very much, Chair Scanlon.
You're welcome. So just to level set everybody for this conversation, I just want to give you a 30-second synopsis of how we got here and why we're holding this forum this morning. Back in January of 2021, when the legislature convened for this term and I became chair, I introduced the concept of a child tax credit. It had been something that people had done before, but I tried to make it a really big priority of mine, and it did not pass in that first session. But I was very fortunate to have worked with Senator Fonfara and the governor and the legislative leadership and all our colleagues to get some version of it done in the budget that we passed earlier this year. And it was a child tax rebate in which $250 per child were sent to 238,668 families in the state of Connecticut on behalf of 369,883 kids that benefited from this program. And the timing obviously couldn't have been any better, because when these checks went out in the fall was when inflation was going pretty crazy. And as part of our budget that we passed this year, we tried to make inflation less bad in a number of different ways. And this was certainly one of them, and something that I'm deeply proud of and think did make a big difference. So we're here today for really two reasons. Number one, to just level set and get some updates from folks on what this program meant and how it worked. And then to talk about what the future of it might be amongst the people who will have the ability to do that in the future. I am not one of them. I see we've been joined by Representative Maria Horn, who is going to be my successor as chair of this committee. And obviously, there are a number of our colleagues on here that will likely be a part of this committee in the future. I would just say, as my parting thoughts on this, that obviously I think this is a really, really important policy, and I would hope that my colleagues continue it in some way and find a way to continue it and make sure that families are getting the relief that I think that they need and deserve as a way of showing that our state is really family friendly and that we are creating a state in which we're making it easier for people that have small children to live here, to run a business, to do all the kind of things that we want everyone to do in Connecticut. And I think this program and programs like it are the ways that we can help with that. So enough from me. We have a good lineup of people today. And the first of which is our good friend and the Commissioner of the Department of Revenue Services, Commissioner Mark Bowden, who I know is joined by two of his colleagues that I'll let him introduce. And then we're going to try to keep all our speakers today to around 5 minutes, which I know is not easy, but we have a big lineup and we want to get to questions. So with that, Commissioner, welcome back, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and congratulations on your recent election. Senator Fonfara, it's good to see you. Congratulations to you, my friend, and appreciate all you do for our great state, as well as Rep. Cheeseman and Senator Martin. We appreciate your hard work, and congratulations to Maria, my friend Maria Horn, her taking over, assuming the mantle from Rep. Scanlon. No question about it. Representative Scanlon and Senator Fonfara were deeply passionate about this issue, the child tax credit. Any way that we can provide a lift up to our families is to be applauded. It's something that I think all of us were happy to be able to do. I want to just make a quick note, and I'm going to give you some stats, and I'll keep it to 5 minutes. But the quick note is that DRS has administered over 8 programs related to COVID and not to COVID, as well as just straight programs, in this case related to the child tax rebate. doesn't happen in a vacuum. It happens because of people like John Biello, who are on the call, and Lou Bakari, who work very hard every day to make sure that these checks go out. This year alone, we did 4 separate payments to families and to businesses, as well as work closely with DECD on other payment programs that went out. And those include both of the earned income tax credit checks that went out, as well as this program that we're talking about today. That's a pivot in operations for DRS. We've never actually sent money to people. We're used to collecting money, but we've gotten pretty good at it. So I'm very proud of the team and the work that they've done. So here's some facts for you. On the date that we began issuing checks, 8/22/2022, we sent out 189,374 checks for a total of $78 million. I can always repeat these later on or send them to the committee if they would like to see them. By the end of the program, the last check batch that we just sent out on 12/8/22, we sent out another 2,300 checks. It totaled 202,527 checks that we sent to our residents. That's a total of $84 million, roughly $84.5 million that we've dispersed out of the $125 million that was allocated. In addition to that, this impacted total number of children is 353,000 children were impacted by this payment that we sent out. Pretty impressive, broad-reaching, and certainly something that everybody here can be proud of. Two things I want to mention. One is we received some criticism, and coming from your arena, I'm used to receiving criticism, so it's not a big deal. But I just want to point it out about the timing of these checks, and Rep. Scanlon and Senator Fanfara and I worked closely on this. Our goal was to get this money into the hands of our families as soon as possible. This wasn't a question that, or an issue that we were looking at politics for. We were looking at how can we impact families who are being crushed right now by last summer by inflation. The price of gas was much higher, as you remember, and we wanted to get these checks out. So that it speaks to the timing. The second piece is that, well, why don't you just dump a check into everybody's account that you knew qualified? And I'm sure that question may come up here today. We couldn't do that. We had to do an application process because we don't have the information and the data to know who would qualify. The number of people that qualify or families that qualify each year changes. It fluctuates up and down depending on a whole bunch of variety of different factors. So we weren't able just to identify who qualified and give them a check. We actually had to do the application process. We recognized it was cumbersome and a challenge, and that's why people like Lisa Tepper Bates, the United Way, stepped forward to do their hard work, and we were everywhere. I think I remember Lisa and I were at a press conference in the center part of the state, speaking to this program because we wanted people to apply, and it was somewhat effective. Now, here two things are you should be aware of. Is one is the information that we need we'll get from the IRS probably by the end of the month. They release that about a year, 12, 15 months after they've collected it for the tax year that we want. And we are asking more questions on this year's return to be able to identify families in need and to make some more inferences from those folks that are footing the bill for our state government. So we've got more questions that are on the return this year on our forms. And two, we are getting the information to be able to figure out if did we cover everybody or did everybody get a check who was certainly owed a check by our policy set forth. So with that, I'll close it up and say thanks for the opportunity. It's always a good thing to give people a check. It's fun. So I appreciate you making a really strong and positive policy decision.
Thank you, Commissioner. We're going to try to keep the questions for each person to be kind of a lightning round just because we have a bunch of different speakers, but I don't want to have 7 other people talk and then you forget your great question to stump the commissioner. So with that, we'll open it up to folks. But I do want to just say, Commissioner, just for those at home doing some quick math, it looks like there's about $35 million still left in the hopper for us to try to get those people the checks that we find out more information from in December, right?
That's correct. Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions for Commissioner Boughton before we lose him on the program?
Yeah, sorry. Didn't get my hand
Representative
up. Thank you very much, Chair Scanlon. Thank you for coming this morning, Commissioner. So of the 125 million, was this in the general fund budget, or were these one-time ARPA funds?
That is a great question. I believe this was in the general fund budget, but I would have to go back and check.
Okay.
I believe general fund, yes.
Yeah, we did not use ARPA money for this.
All right, I'd love confirmation on that. All right.
Yeah, you got it. I'll text you.
Thank you. And I know that as of August, I think, and you may have touched on this, there were 33,000 families still waiting for their application to be adjudicated. And apologies if you mentioned the number still outstanding. I know we have 35 million to pay that amount, but people who submitted applications and you're still looking for that final data.
There are probably always several thousand applications that we're calling through. A couple things happened. One is people, because we were so good at getting our message out, people went and put in multiple applications for the same family. So we didn't want to just run a check. So we've had to go through and overlay who's got a check, who hasn't, and then figure out exactly what's left. The other thing I just want to point out to the committee and to the folks watching is that we had a number of checks that were, a number of people that were subject to that had owed us tax dollars. So when we go through there and look and say you owe us money, we sometimes would use your check to pay off your debt to the state. I mean, it's still a benefit to the family. They don't have the debt hanging over their head anymore, but that is our policy. So I just wanted to point that out as well. But generally speaking, there's always a couple thousand that we're working our way through. John, I don't know if you have any numbers on what we have left over.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. For the most part, with the checks, we are all finished. We've sent out all the checks that remain. The last population that we had were the ones that Commissioner just mentioned, where we had to offset debt. The only population that we've got remaining to address are those that are not qualified. We had about 3,000. 3,000 to 4,000 applications where the individual applicants were not qualified for the rebate. So we are in the process of handling those accounts. But everyone who was eligible to receive a payment did in fact get that check.
Okay, and sorry, I guess that was October. As there were 33,000. All right, and final question, quick technical, is this a physical paper check or do you do this by EFT?
It's a physical paper check.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Chair Scanlon.
Any further questions from the committee for Commissioner Boughton? Seeing none, Commissioner Liu, John, as always, thank you. And on a personal note, just was a pleasure working with you gentlemen on this committee as a chair, and look forward to working with you in a new capacity going forward.
Likewise, Representative. Thank you.
All right, next up, we have Tiffany Donaldson, who is the President and Chief Executive Officer of the Connecticut Health Foundation. Tiffany, thank you for joining us this morning. Floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Chair Scanlon, and thank you all for this opportunity to speak. And my perspective is more talking about the impact that this tax credit has had on our Connecticut families. As mentioned, I am the President and CEO of the Connecticut Health Foundation. We are the state's largest health philanthropy. In addition to that, I am a proud board member of the United Way of Connecticut. And I appreciate, again, this opportunity because we are an organization, the Connecticut Health Foundation, that is focused on health equity for people of Connecticut in the state. And we focus on changing the policies and the practices to assure that people have access to live their healthiest lives. So you may be asking yourselves, how does this connect to a tax credit? Well, we have looked across as an organization on how providing additional income to families helps with their basic needs, including healthcare. So over the past few years, we've supported the State Office of Health Strategy and the State Office of the Comptroller in developing the Connecticut Healthcare Affordability Index. And this index helps determine how much income individuals and families need to meet their basic expenses without going into debt, including their healthcare expenses. And what we have looked at are the characteristics that make a household more or less likely to be able to meet their basic needs. And in our research and in our findings, as many of you probably know, we found that the presence of children made it much more difficult and it made a tremendous difference in families having adequate income to meet their basic needs. Specifically in Connecticut, households with children were twice as likely to lack enough income to meet their basic needs. And many of these families, because we also looked at this data by race and ethnicity, many of these families are families of color who are struggling to meet their basic needs. And so we are looking at this because we recognize that when families have extra dollars, they actually spend it towards things like healthcare. There was a study by JP Morgan Institute that found that in the week after receiving a tax refund, households increased their spending on healthcare by 60%. That means that when people are getting more money, they are spending it on the things that they need, like going to the dentist, going to the doctor, and paying off past medical bills. And this is important for us because we, as an organization that's looking at how people can access healthcare, we know that getting more dollars means that they have access to the things that they need, as going to the dentist, as going to the doctor. And we know that tax credits, as the child tax credit, can help free up dollars so people can meet their basic needs. Now, as an individual who grew up in poverty, I know the decisions that families have to make when they are deciding between food, healthcare, transportation, childcare, and it is tough. Every single dollar counts for families in these situations. And so I commend you and I thank you for lightening the load for our Connecticut families and lightening the load so that they can meet their needs and so that they have the opportunity to be one step closer to living their healthiest lives. And so again, I appreciate your consideration and your help for our Connecticut families. And our hope is that we continue to help families live their healthiest lives and end some of the disparities that we are currently seeing in our state and closing the gap. So thank you.
Thank you, Tiffany, for being here. We don't have a ton of data from the state level on what people spent the money on, but at the federal level, when last year we had a 6-month plus up of the federal child tax credit, there was a lot of studies that showed not only did it eliminated child poverty in half in 6 months of time, which is an incredible statistic. But there was a lot of studies that showed what people spent the money on, and they were not frivolous things. They were things that were necessities. They were diapers and wipes and clothes for their kids and groceries and gas and things that really, really help the kind of families that Tiffany is talking about and the one that I grew up in personally. So really informs the work of why we're here today. Any questions for Tiffany from the committee? See none. Tiffany, just want to thank you for all the work that you're doing to help with this program and many others. And thanks for being with us today.
Thank you.
Okay, next up is Lisa Tepper Bates, who is the president and CEO of the United Way of Connecticut. And I want to just give her a special shout out because while there were many, many people who helped us get this off the ground, it really was a grassroots and guerrilla effort in which there was no marketing budget. There was no real way to get the word out besides, people like United Way stepping up and helping us. So Lisa, on behalf of those who have been involved with this, thank you to you and your team for all you did, and the floor is now yours.
Well, thank you very much for that kind message to all of the members of the coalition who worked together, including with support from the Connecticut Health Foundation and in partnership with DRS to get the word out. it was important. So thank you for that. I'd like to acknowledge today the importance of the coalition that we represent, which is not only the 15 local United Ways, but also 12 additional partners who are listed in my written testimony and who have joined us in what we've come to call the Nonprofit Child Tax Credit Coalition, all working together and pulling the same direction for this important measure in the state. And thank you very much to the chairs and to the committee for the opportunity to talk with you today. I want to provide some additional context further to what Tiffany Donaldson provided, just to illustrate, again, how very important the 2022 tax rebate was and how very valuable a permanent tax credit would be for families in Connecticut. I think most of you are familiar with the United Way ALICE report, which provides a data-driven perspective on the true cost of living in our state. Our last report in 2020, and we will have a new report out in just a few months, but the last report revealed that nearly 40% of Connecticut households lived paycheck to paycheck, even before the onset of the COVID pandemic. What that means is that despite working hard at the jobs available to them, all of these households struggle every month, as Tiffany said, to afford life's most basic necessities. And as I think you know, part of the challenge here is that Connecticut consistently ranks among the 10 highest cost states in America for housing. And for our cost of childcare, we rank among the top 5 most expensive. And what that means, according to our ALICE data, is that 2 parents of a toddler and a baby need to make $90,000 just to make ends meet. That leaves no room for any type of savings. That's just to make ends meet. And in the written testimony that I provided, you'll find additional details on that budget. So the other thing that we now know is that Connecticut families' budgets are going to be stretched further, given the expiration of both the enhanced federal child tax credit and the reduction of the federal child and dependent care credit. And I know I have colleagues who will follow me shortly and can tell you much more about that. But that's an additional way in which our families will be stressed going forward. We also know that you appreciate that costs are rising across the board. The cost of bread, for example, has risen by over 17% in the past year alone, while home energy costs are up by 27%. For all these reasons, the child tax rebate was such an important resource for families this past year. And again, just want to thank the members of this committee, the General Assembly as a whole, the governor, and of course, Commissioner Boughton, John Biello, who I hope is here, who is a great partner as we all work together to implement that important measure that you passed. But moving forward, I just want to be clear that Connecticut United Ways and our partners in the Child Tax Credit Coalition really hope to see the creation of a permanent tax credit at the $600 per child level. And just to give you a sense in this environment of rising costs, what that means, $1,200 could represent for a family facing these rising costs a full month of food, just under a month of housing costs, or a month's worth of transportation. And a fully refundable CTC would provide an economic benefit to our communities. For every CTC dollar earned, Moody's Analytics tells us that $1.38 is returned to the economy. And finally, I just want to note to everyone that this truly is an issue of equity. A permanent CTC will directly benefit the 57% of Black households and the 63% of Hispanic households in our state who live at or below the ALICE threshold. Thank you again for the opportunity to speak today, and I'd be pleased to take any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Lisa. And I will make sure that the committee gets your testimony and any reports that you want to share with them about the ALICE families. Obviously, you've done a ton of work on that, and it's always important to bring that home. Any questions for Lisa from the committee?
Just quick question, if I may, Chair Scanlon.
Of course.
So looking at this, Lisa, if you implement that $600 child tax credit, I mean, my quick math, that's almost 2.5 times what we currently paid out. So in terms of total cost of the state, we'd be looking at something in the region of $350 to $400 million a year. Am I doing the math correctly?
I think that's right, Representative Cheeseman, but I would say that it's an extraordinarily effective way to get assistance into the hands of families. We appreciate that elected representatives and the governor, you'll have to make decisions, you'll have to make choices. But this is an incredibly powerful way to get money into families' hands for what they most need. And that's in contrast to the much more restrictive types of benefits that may or may not correspond to what a specific family needs. So I would just note that to you again, in addition to the fact that there is this powerful information from Moody's that suggests that the CTC has this $1.38 per dollar positive impact on local economies.
Yeah, I accept that, and there'll be room for lots of conversation. But as you know, I guess what 32.2% of Connecticut households have children. I'm hearing constantly from particularly my seniors on fixed incomes and others who are looking for similar help. So anyway, but I thank you. I thank you for your work. Obviously, anything we can do to make Connecticut a more affordable state for everyone here, whether they're 2 or 82, is an important discussion. Thank you, Lisa, and thank you very much, Chairman Scanlon.
You're welcome. Any other questions for Lisa? Seeing none, Lisa, thank you again. We were supposed to be joined by a young mother named Candace, but like a lot of parents today, including myself, we were a little thrown off by a little snowstorm, so she couldn't join us. However, we have been joined by Crystal Williams, who is a mom from New Haven and is going to testify a little bit now about her experience with this. So, Crystal, welcome, and the floor is yours.
Hi, thank you. Yes, so my name is Crystal Williams. I am 34 years old. I am born and raised in New Haven, Connecticut, and I'm a single mom of 2 children. So it's really interesting to hear the numbers that you guys are giving when I hear that the average income should be about $90,000 for somebody with 2 kids. I'm definitely not up that high just yet. So it's I guess really important to talk about stuff like this because right now I currently rent. The goal is to get a household one day. This tax credit would be so beneficial because the last time you guys gave the tax credit, it was very helpful with things like supplies. The schools are stretched pretty thin, so they were asking parents to donate different safety supplies and cleaning supplies, which of course, with everything going around COVID in the beginning of the year, and now we have things like the flu and RSV, it's really important that we be able to provide our children and the teachers and the people that we work with, safety. So that was really a big part of the spending was the masks, the gloves, the cleaning supplies, and then just basic things like also food. Food has increased a lot. The other day at the grocery store, eggs were like $8 for a dozen. So I'm seeing a lot of increase in food items. Rent is up hundreds of dollars. It is absolutely ridiculous. And everything's increasing except income, unfortunately. And I know we're in the world is in a state, but it's really difficult here in Connecticut with the rent increasing, the food increasing, and people aren't able to make ends meet. I think the result of not increasing the tax credit would result in a lot of families being hungry, homeless, and kind of hopeless because they won't have anywhere else to turn for this. The food pantries, my job is, I'm a clinical supervisor here at a nonprofit, Continuum of Care, and the community we serve, like they're being stretched thin. The pantries stretched thin. They don't have enough food to go around for anybody. So I think it's really important that we look into this and consider this. I know it's more money spent, but I appreciate the fact that more money spent means people are going to go out and spend more money as well on, like they said, things that they need.
Thank you, Crystal. Thanks for being here and sharing that perspective. And I think it sort of speaks to what we were talking about earlier, which is that the studies all show that when people got this money, they used it to keep their families going. And I was raised by a single mom, so I know a little bit about what it takes to do that. And you can never thank you enough for all you do for your kids. So just thanks.
Thank you. And thank you for having me here today.
You're welcome, but don't go just yet because I want to see if anybody has a question for you. Anybody here have a question for Crystal? All right, seeing none.
Yeah, sorry.
Oh, Representative Cheeseman, yeah.
Thank you for coming this morning, Crystal. Can you talk about the process? How easy it was for you to apply, how long it took you to get the money, you know, anything, if this is going to go forward, you're a user, ways one could improve the process, because I think it's very important to hear from people like you with regard to how this is implemented.
So me personally, I do appreciate when it was kind of just directly put into the accounts. I know we did, I believe there was a paper check that had came out at one point, but being directly put in the account, it just makes things easier because again, we go back to the schedules. My job is typically 9 to 5, but again, the individuals I serve, sometimes I need to be here longer or shorter, however I need to put it. So having the money easily accessible allowed me to, hey, I'm off work. I can go by the grocery store, grab what I need to get and kind of head home.
And as far as the application
no,
itself was concerned, was that difficult or did you find that pretty straightforward?
No, that was pretty straightforward.
Okay.
That's also appreciated because I feel like sometimes with applications of things of this nature, it can be a little confusing for some people. And the more confusing it is, one, we see a decrease in people actually applying. And two, we see them applying wrong. Again, the population I serve, my job is to go in and help these individuals properly fill out applications like this all the time. So.
Okay. All right. Thank you for your input. Thank you very much, Chairman Scanlon.
No problem. Thank you.
Senator Fonfara.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, Crystal. Thank you for testifying today. And I'm going to reveal my ignorance when I ask this question, so please consider it in that context. Does the EITC help you at all? Do you qualify for that, or others that you in your job that you see are benefiting from that, the earned income tax credit?
Yes, absolutely. I benefit from it, and the individuals I serve, I know a couple of them also received it. Anytime there's an increase in any income whatsoever, it is helpful because, like I said previously, when we talk about what it takes to run a 2-child household, at it being at $90,000, and I recently graduated with my bachelor's. I'm trying to go back to school for my master's. When you say $90,000 is what it takes, and I'm a lot below that, it's almost discouraging because it literally means that I'm stretching super thin everywhere. It means one, if God forbid I got sick, what would it mean? Where would I take from? Thank God I have a lot of support. My family is very supportive. I have a supportive partner. So together we can match that, but that's very difficult. That's not always the case in every household. So I think anytime we can increase any type of income within the homes, it's going to be beneficial. Because like I said, the result of not doing so, it is absolutely, families are going to be homeless. I know several people right now struggling, trying to figure out how they're going to pay their rent for the next 6 months, how they are going to feed their children. We're seeing an increase with the kids getting sick. Parents are having to be home more because their kids are sick. We can't send their kids sick to school, so you're now home from work.
Mr. Chairman, I could spend a lot of time with Crystal and asking her further questions and learning more from her personal experiences and others that she works with. So, but I'll pass the baton back to you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Crystal, very much.
No problem.
I'm on mute. You think I'd know? Anyone else from the committee, questions or comments for Crystal? Seeing none, Crystal, just thanks again. Appreciate your perspective and being here today to tell us about your story and why this matters to you.
Thank you again for having me here.
All right. We will now go to Emily Byrne, who is the Executive Director of the Connecticut Voices for Children. Emily is somebody who I also want to just give a special shout out to. One of the first people I called when I wanted to introduce this back in 2021. And her organization has been a great member of the coalition that has been working on this for the better part of almost 2 years now. So with that, Emily, the floor is yours. Thanks for all your help.
Thank you so much, Representative. Good morning, all. Senator Fonfara, Senator Martin, Representative Cheeseman, and other honorable members of the Finance Committee. I'm speaking on behalf of Connecticut Voices for Children, but I'm going to be really, really brief because we're hearing so much good testimony from experts across the state. I think just want to focus my remarks on 2 points. The first is that is the import of the Connecticut Child Tax Credit in advancing tax equity. Connecticut is one of only 4 states with an income tax and one of only 2 states with an independent income tax that doesn't adjust for family size or child care expenses to help offset the high cost and growing cost of raising children. In fact, Connecticut's average middle-class family with 2 children pays nearly as much in the state income tax as the federal income tax, and it pays more in the state income tax than the federal income tax if it has child care expenses. For our state's families that are at the low and middle income end of the spectrum, the state child tax rebate, which was implemented in the credit, which was implemented in the form of the rebate, was critically important to afford basic needs, as Tiffany, Lisa, and Crystal previously just spoke to. It's also critically important to provide, equity in our state's regressive tax system. The second thing that I'll note is that while I know it's easier for the state to be deferential to federal policies, given the resource differential, we need to reckon with the reality that Congress is likely to be gridlocked for some time. We have to leverage the political power and institutions we have, which is state policy. And you all have done an extraordinary thing in creating a Connecticut child tax rebate. Legislating a permanent state level child tax credit is a small but really important step to making life a little bit easier for hardworking families. So I thought it would be brief. I am. Thank you so much for the opportunity and happy to answer questions.
Thank you, Emily. Any questions? I see Representative Cheeseman's giving her the thumbs up, but I don't know if that's a question.
Yeah, I know. Too many of these little icons here. Anyway, yes, thumbs up because I'm interested. So did I misunderstand, Emily? Did you say Connecticut was one of only 4 states with an separate income tax?
Connecticut is one of only 4 states with an income tax and only one of 2 states with an independent income tax that doesn't adjust for family size or childcare expenses.
All right. I thought there were more states with an income tax. And I know this was something we touched on. Obviously, we're discussing the child tax credit today. I know there were proposals from my caucus to link the deduction, which has never been linked to inflation, and also the tax brackets. And I would love to see some more discussion about that. Again, we want to help families, but for some more broad-based tax relief, I think we could go far in making Connecticut more affordable. And if you could if you could share with the clerk more details about the other states and their tax policy and where Connecticut falls short in more detail, that would be much appreciated.
Happy to do so, Representative. And to your point, absolutely. I think Crystal said it really beautifully. Any amount of additional support in terms of cash assistance is going to be tremendously beneficial for families across the board. And there are multiple ways to make this happen.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Chairman Scanlon.
Thanks. Emily, just to clarify what Representative Cheeseman, it's not 4 states that have an income tax. You're saying there's only 4 states that don't do
Correct.
What?
That don't offset the cost of raising children. So other states with income taxes will provide a child tax credit or rebate or some sort of subsidy in order to offset the high cost of raising children.
Got it. Representative Cheeseman, does that clear that for you? Okay. Any other questions for Emily? Seeing none. Emily, thank you again. All right. Next up is Serena Laws, who is the director of the Trinity College Volunteer Income Tax Assistance, commonly known as VITA Tax Clinic. Serena, the floor is yours.
Great, thank you. Good morning, and thanks so much for the opportunity to speak with you today about the child tax rebate. I'm a senior lecturer of political science at Trinity College, where I teach courses on American politics and public policy. I also run a VITA clinic with my students right next to campus on Broad Street at Trinfo Cafe. So first, let me join the chorus and applaud you for establishing the Connecticut tax rebate last summer. As a parent of 2 young children, I can testify those funds helped us pay for summer camp, and I know many middle-class families who benefited. For lower income families, the need was obviously more acute, and the rebate provided much needed support at a time when costs were rising and wages were not necessarily keeping up. Without replicating too much of what has been said, I want to make 3 points that stem from the scholarship on tax credits like this, as well as from an ongoing research project I'm conducting at the clinic. First, with the expiration of the multiple federal enhancements of tax credits expiring, the needs of Connecticut families in the coming years will be even greater, and they will receive much less federal support to address them than they've received in the past 3 years. Children raised by grandparents will be particularly hard hit, as improvements in the enhanced EITC that reached them in 2021, in the 2021 tax year, have sunsetted and are no longer available. Second, unfortunately, we cannot expect a continuation of the expanded federal child tax credit anytime soon, as Emily alluded to, making it all the more imperative for states to act with bold measures like the child tax rebate. The federal social policy response to the pandemic was such a powerful illustration of what government can do, with clear results, having the lowest child poverty rate on record after all those measures in the American Rescue Plan. Yet, unfortunately, members of Congress were not able to find the votes to make the expansion of the child tax credit permanent. And with a divided Congress, it's highly unlikely that they will be able to do so in the next 2 years. Thus, the political realities at the national level make the extension of the child tax rebate in Connecticut even more imperative. Finally, refundable tax credits like EITC and the child tax credit are among the most well understood of social tax expenditures, and expanding the Connecticut tax rebate provides support that recipients can trace back to government. Scholars of American social policy often divide American social provision into 2 broad categories: direct benefits through traditional social programs like Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid, and indirect benefits that are often provided through the tax code, like the home mortgage interest deduction, tax breaks for employer-based health insurance, and EITC. While widely used and a powerful policy tool, one challenge with providing social benefits through tax credits is that they are often not as visible to citizens. Cornell professor Suzanne Mettler has powerfully argued that such submerged policies can make it difficult for citizens to trace the benefits they receive back to government, with many who received substantial benefits through the tax code not even realizing they have received a government benefit. However, the child tax credit appears to be somewhat of an exception. I'm conducting an ongoing study that attempts to gauge individuals' understandings of the tax credits they benefit from. What we have found is that while clients are appreciative of tax credits like EITC, they are often unclear on the details and do not necessarily know which part of their refund is from withholding, overpayment, or from various tax credits. The tax credits that all clients understood the best was the child tax credit. They knew they had received it and they appreciated the support. Another finding we uncovered in the interviews is that some of the confusion about tax credits comes from how they keep changing, from the 2017 tax overhaul to the many and varied policy changes during the pandemic. Clients often see the changing amount of their refunds as confusing and arbitrary from year to year, which undermines the positive political feedback that such credits should generate. Making the child tax rebate permanent is a way of showing an ongoing commitment to supporting families. Permanent, consistent, and refundable tax credits are the most visible to citizens and the easiest to trace back to government. They reduce the confusion and seeming arbitrariness of the tax process for families in need in the state. Thank you.
Thank you, Serena. And I see Senator Fonfara has a question in a second. And I just want to say, I think it's really important that you brought that up. You can kind of see this with Crystal a little bit. When somebody asked her about how she got the money, she was sort of conflating the federal and the state. And that's understandable because even people who are really well versed in the stuff don't really know. They're just trying to get by and do what they can. And I don't want to get political here at all, but there were some insinuations that were made about this, that, you know, this was a political thing that we were doing. When, to your point, most people who receive this don't even know where they got it from or how that happened. But that doesn't mean that the assistance that they received was any less appreciated or necessary. It just was that it was not conflating to be a political thing to them. It was really just about the thing itself. So really appreciate you bringing that up, and appreciate all you do to help people in your neck of the woods. And I know that neck of the woods is many of the constituents of the next speaker. So Senator Fonfara, I turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Serena, for your testimony. I'm a little confused. Much of the testimony so far, but particularly by Crystal and others who work in this field, is about reducing the cost gap. And this tax credit has done that. But you spoke about awareness of how that cost gap was affected. And why is that important? If the EITC or any other program that we are providing or assisting with in partnership with the federal government is reducing that cost gap, that's my term, it's not very artful, but for the sake of this discussion, why is that a critical thing? I'm not following your logic at all.
Okay. It's something from the literature that's fairly common and may or may not be, of interest here, but there are challenges with doing policy through tax credits. It's incredibly effective at reducing poverty, but citizens are not always aware. If they're more aware of what they're receiving, they're less confused when their refund seemingly changes from year to year, and they're more able to, have a positive relationship that government is really supporting them and helping them out. And so I think that's where that research comes from. I think, some programs where it's a very visible benefit, the big one that Suzanne Mettler studies is the GI Bill, produced a lot of positive political effects that people feel more engaged in government. And so I think the fact that our clients are aware of the child tax credit, they appreciate it is a good thing. And I think that it's helpful if they can trace the benefit they're receiving back to government.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other questions for Serena from the committee? Seeing none, thanks, Serena, for being here today. And then our final speaker, because our eighth person, Elizabeth, also got tied up with the snow delay, is Mike Fournier, who is the VITA Program Director for Simplify CT. And I will let Mike take it away.
Great. Thank you, Chairman. My name is Mike Fournier, and I am the VITA Program Director for Simplify CT. We are a Connecticut volunteer income tax assistance program whose mission is to provide low-income Connecticut residents best-in-class tax advocacy at no cost to them. We were a partner in the Connecticut Child Tax Rebate Coalition that Lisa mentioned earlier. In our outreach work on the Connecticut Child Tax Rebate, we found the Connecticut DRS to be a strong champion in its efforts toward the mission of lifting the pain points and barriers to access with the initial Connecticut Child Tax Rebate. They built an easy to understand and use online application in both English and Spanish that was transformative. The delivery of an 80% success rate in just over 2 months was astounding and impactful, as we've heard today. It proved the use of simple digital technology can be effective to provide vital benefits within a compressed time frame. DRS recognized early on that this deployment could only be successful if it was combined with grassroots digital and traditional campaigns across the state. Led by United Way of Connecticut and its partners, outreach efforts, including SMS texting and social media marketing, proved remarkably effective in building an underlying level of trust and credibility in the process. We have several recommendations to enhance the efficiency of operations and to widen access to additional families in need. Our preference would be to continue to automate the child tax credit payments using information gathered from federal and/or Connecticut individual income tax returns. This would require the DRS to accept and receive dependent data for each eligible child in the household. Collecting this data via tax returns would enable presumptive eligibility, allow for DRS verification of the eligible children in the household, and enable DRS to provide status notification. Key consideration also needs to be given to the approximately 50,000 households with children who do not currently have a tax filing requirement. To refine the DRS model to include a simple online application to receive the child tax credit. This would help alleviate fears and anxiety of many, while simultaneously helping to close the gap for 50,000 non-filing Connecticut families, allowing them to get this refundable credit. The safe receipt of rebates and refundable credits is also critical for our low-income population. We recommend that we use direct deposit of the child tax credit into the client's bank account using information on file with the DRS. The safety of direct deposit is especially vital to a vulnerable population that are at risk for theft or are experiencing constant housing, mobility, and insecurity issues due to the high cost of housing. Ensuring that DRS has a dedicated hotline, phone number, and call center up and available to answer questions in English and Spanish in real time is also essential. This population is known to struggle with concerns over whether they are entitled to these benefits. Access to a live person available to talk to or text in the language of choice is a real boon in eliminating barriers to entry. Lastly, consideration should be advocated for those households with parents who do not have a federal identification tax ID number known as an ITIN, but have children who are legally present with social security numbers to be able to file with a unique Connecticut application number. In 2021, Maine provided stimulus and other credits to their immigrant community who were unable to procure an ITIN because they did not have a federal filing requirement. Other states are looking to follow Maine's leads. We hope that once approved by the state legislature, DRS would be able to incorporate a similar structure into the application to streamline the complexity of immigrant filing. We are confident the lessons learned by DRS with the initial Connecticut Child Tax Rebate Program, combined with strong community outreach and effective digital tools, will close the filing gap that exists throughout the state and will ensure everyone eligible receives this benefit. Simplify CT, along with our United Way of Connecticut partners, look forward to continuing to provide bilingual call center tax specialist support all year long to help support the expansion of the Connecticut Child Tax Credit. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike, for being here. Any questions for Mike? Seeing none, Mike, thank you for your testimony today. Really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Before we wrap, any comments from any members of the committee or thoughts that they want to share before we wrap up today? Okay, well, seeing none, thanks everybody for tuning in today, and look forward to continuing to follow what you do on this issue in a few weeks when the session begins again. So thanks everybody. And one thanks more before Senator Fonfara speaks. Just want to thank Bree Wolf, who's been the administrator of the Finance Committee. Bree, it's been awesome working with you these last few years, and just want to thank you for all your help and for everything you do for the committee and for us. So thanks. Senator Fonfara.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to take this final opportunity, I believe, unless something unknown to us were to come on our calendar, to thank you for your partnership. I know there are a lot of folks on this screen right now that I'm looking at that may not deal every day in the legislature. That's probably to their health benefit, if nothing else. But for those many others who are on or listening, you are an extremely talented As George Ritter, Tom Ritter's father, and Matt Ritter's grandfather used to say to me, you see around corners. It's been a joy to work with you. Your knowledge, your foresight far exceeds your age, and that's going to serve you well as you move into this new position. And I know that you will serve the state. I won't say even better because you've done that in a great way already, but I'm looking forward to working with you as my new co-chair, Maria Horn, will feel the same way. So congratulations, and we'll miss you. And thank you for your partnership.
Thank you, John. And obviously, right back at you. Really learned a lot from you the last 2 years, and it's been great to partner with you and get some really important stuff done, including the budget that got passed this year, which did a lot to help the kind of people that you and I really, really care about helping. And so just been great working with you, and thank you for those really kind words. And I'm not going far, and I hope you still pick up my phone call because I'm going to need you. Representative Cheeseman, bring us home here. You're on mute. I'm sure what you're saying is really great, though.
Man, when we get back in person, we won't have to worry about this. No, I just want to echo the Chairman Fanfara's remarks about what a pleasure it's been to work for you. I didn't always get my way, but that's what happens when you're in minority. And again, Bree's work, herding cats and doing all that stuff. And this is a very important conversation we're having. And I want to be, I hope I'm not talking out of school, be included in the conversation. We have seen so many struggles over the course of the past few years and before that. And I think as we move forward, we need to bear in mind that there are many people in Connecticut who need our help. We need to look at the best way to help as many of them in the fairest way as possible. And I look forward in the new session to working with the Chairman Fanfara, with Representative Horn and everyone else on this committee and everyone else serving in the legislature as we craft a way forward that doesn't leave people out. As you know, some of my parties say doesn't pick winners and losers, but is really broad-based. And again, to quote my good chair, Senator Fanfara, that looks at a way to provide every Connecticut resident, every child, every family with that good job that lifts them out of poverty and gives them a path forward. And with that, I'll be quiet because I talk far too much in these meetings, but I want to thank you all for everything you do every day, because this is how we reach good solutions, when we work together. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Representative, and thank you again to everyone who joined us today for all your work, and look forward to working on this issue in the future, because as we've talked about for an hour, it's really, really important and it matters to the people of Connecticut, and therefore it should matter to this committee, and I know that it will in the next term. So thank you all very much, and have a great day and happy holiday.
Thank you. Merry Christmas. Happy New Year, everyone.